We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Every piece of information in this video comes from verified public reporting and named on-record sources. No individual is accused of any crime. The Guthrie family has been officially cleared by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. That clearance stands 97 days. And the question that has sat underneath every press conference, every forensic development, every profiler session, every tip line call, the question that nobody has answered publicly in 97 days, is not who took Nancy Guthrie. It is why. Why this woman? Why this house? Why this family? Why an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and daily medication and limited mobility living alone in a quiet Tucson neighborhood was the target of what 3 criminal profilers described on national television last week as a type of case they have never seen before, as far as they know. Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News in March that investigators believe the abduction was targeted. His exact words, "We believe we know why the kidnapper did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that." He knows the motive. He will not say what it is. The profilers will. And what they have said publicly, from named, credentialed, on-the-record sources over the past 97 days, assembles into a portrait of a suspect whose motive is more specific, more disturbing, and more forensically traceable than most of the public conversation has acknowledged. This is the why. Built entirely from what the evidence shows and what the named professionals who have analyzed it have said publicly. Start with the behavioral evidence. Because before the theories, before the motive frameworks, before the diverging assessments of who this person is, the doorbell footage established something that every profiler who has publicly analyzed this case has returned to. He was not nervous. The masked man who appeared on Nancy Guthrie's front porch at 1:47 in the morning moved without hesitation. No looking over the shoulder. No hurried steps. No visible calculation. He located the camera, which is not immediately obvious to someone who has not been to that house before. He covered the lens with foliage from a potted plant on Nancy's own porch. He moved through that porch with the practiced calm of someone who had rehearsed every step. Mary Ellen O'Toole, retired FBI supervisory special agent, former senior profiler who spent decades in the behavioral analysis unit, now a professor of forensic science, analyzed this publicly. She said the first thing she looks for at a crime scene is simple. Was the offender as nervous as the situation called for? And with this suspect, she said, you do not see the nervousness you would expect. Not in his movement. Not in his posture. Not in how he approached the door and spent time on that porch. She said, if you and I decided to commit this crime, we would be nervous wrecks. He was not. Which means one of two things. He had done something like this before. Or he had rehearsed this in his mind so many times, played it out so completely in his own head, that the physical reality of being there felt almost familiar to him. The fantasy had already been lived. This was just the execution. That behavioral signature, the practiced calm, the deliberate movement, the absence of panic at a crime that should have produced panic, is the behavioral fingerprint that the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit has been running against 1,500 offender interviews for 97 days. Now the why. Because the behavioral portrait connects directly to the 2 motive theories that named profilers have publicly advanced, and the convergence point between them. Theory 1. This was about Savannah. Jim Fitzgerald, retired FBI profiler, forensic linguist, creator of the Communicated Threat Assessment Database, stated publicly on the record, this has something to do with Savannah on a stalking-type scenario. He did not hedge. He did not qualify it as one possibility among many. He stated it as his professional assessment, and added something operationally specific. Investigators need to go back at least 5 years through every communication Savannah Guthrie has received. Every email. Every social media message. Every letter. Look for patterns. Look for someone who wrote multiple times. Look for language that shifted. Tracy Walder, former FBI agent and CIA officer, went on record with this theory, saying she does not believe for a second this was a burglary that went wrong. She pointed to the level of targeting, the specificity, and the precision with which this crime was executed. She was careful to add something important. She said she had been hesitant to say this publicly because she never wants Savannah to think any of this is her fault. It is not. But the evidence she assessed points clearly in one direction. This was about Savannah. The most devastating way to hurt a woman who is on national television, surrounded by security, impossible to reach directly, was to go after the person she loves most. Her mother. Jim Clemente, retired FBI BAU profiler, independently arrived at the same framework. He told Elizabeth Vargas reports that the abduction may be rooted in revenge or obsessive fixation. That the suspect may have built up anger and resentment toward Savannah over time and felt justified in taking her mother to hurt her. In his own words, it could have been just a delusion in his own mind. He could have built up an anger and a resentment against her. And as a result, he felt justified in taking the mother to hurt her. Raymond Carr, a third retired FBI profiler, aligned with the stalking assessment independently, making this not the isolated theory of one analyst but a convergence of independent professional judgment across multiple people examining the same behavioral evidence. And Savannah confirmed the psychological impact publicly in her March NBC interview. To think that I brought this to her bedside, that it's because of me. And I just want to say I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. She is describing exactly what the stalking theory predicts the objective was. Not the ransom. Not the money. The guilt. The permanent, unresolvable knowledge that her mother's disappearance exists because of who her daughter is. A harm that no institutional security measure could have prevented, because it had already happened. Theory 2. Nancy was targeted for who she was. This theory does not contradict the Savannah connection. It exists alongside it, and in the convergence between them is where the most specific suspect portrait emerges. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She walked with difficulty. She required daily medication to stay alive. She relied on a pacemaker to regulate her heart. She lived alone in a quiet residential neighborhood without a partner to raise the alarm. To a predatory offender, that profile represents something specific. Limited resistance. Specific vulnerability. Someone who cannot run, cannot fight back with any meaningful force, and whose absence might not be noticed immediately in the middle of the night. Clemente laid out the list of possible intelligence sources publicly. Repair work, plumbing, electrical, roofing, pool cleaning, yard work, package deliveries, ride-share drivers. Any routine service professional who had ever been to that home, even once, even briefly, would have had the opportunity to assess Nancy Guthrie's vulnerability. Her daily schedule, her medication routine, her mobility limitations, her pacemaker. And then there is the convergence point, where both theories meet. Someone who noticed Nancy, who discovered through the ordinary proximity of daily life that she was Savannah's mother, and who built a plan that connected both women, one famous and unreachable, one vulnerable and accessible, into a single operation. The Savannah fixation provided the motive. Nancy's vulnerability provided the method. O'Toole raised the Zodiac comparison publicly. She said the offender is very likely preoccupied with the media coverage of this case. The Zodiac sent letters to newspapers, taunted investigators publicly, craved the attention his crimes generated. O'Toole said she keeps that in mind when looking at this case, because the suspect chose to send a ransom note to a news station. He went to TMZ. He made demands he knew would be public. He did not just want Nancy Guthrie. He wanted the world to watch. He wanted Savannah on television begging. He wanted to feel powerful, significant, in a way his normal life had never allowed. And right now, in 97 days of coverage, in every video on every platform, he is almost certainly watching. The backpack. Because this detail matters more than most coverage has examined. The 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack visible in the doorbell footage is a Walmart-exclusive product. That exclusivity was initially treated as a direct purchase trail, a specific SKU at a specific retailer that creates a transactional record. But Sheriff Nanos raised something publicly that complicates that trail. He pointed out that a Walmart-exclusive product can still end up on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, at a garage sale, purchased secondhand, anonymously, without a retail transaction record. Which means the purchase trail investigators were hoping would trace directly back to the buyer may lead somewhere murkier. Either the suspect planned that specifically, acquired the backpack through a channel that does not create a record, which tells investigators something about their operational security awareness. Or they did not plan that far ahead and got lucky. Either way, investigators are still tracing the backpack. Every sale of that specific product through secondary markets creates a different kind of digital record than a retail transaction. And the FBI's digital forensics team is specifically equipped to follow that kind of trail. The DNA. Because this is where the why connects to the who, and where the forensic track currently running at Quantico becomes the most direct path from motive to name. The hair sample recovered from Nancy's home, after 11 weeks in a Florida private lab, is now at the FBI laboratory at Quantico. Advanced testing underway. CC more publicly, if they really do have a rootless hair and it is from that kidnapper, then this is going to be the piece of information that will solve the case. Jim Clemente pointed publicly to something specific about the suspect's appearance in the doorbell footage that most coverage has not fully examined. The ski mask, the gloves, the tight clothing. All of that reflects deliberate forensic awareness, someone who understood that visible skin means recoverable DNA. And yet, the mouth was partially exposed. Breathing, saliva, cellular material. That partial exposure, deliberate or accidental, may be the forensic mistake that undoes 97 days of operational discipline. Because cellular material from breathing, from saliva, from the specific biological reality of a human being moving through a crime scene, that material does not require a root. It does not require a full profile in CODIS. It requires enough of a partial match in a commercial genealogy database to begin building a family tree. The process: investigators upload a partial DNA profile to publicly available genealogy databases, GEDmatch, family tree DNA. They find distant relatives, aunts, cousins, second cousins, people who uploaded their own DNA without knowing what it would eventually help find. And from those relatives, working backward through family trees with a physical description from the doorbell footage as a filter, they narrow toward a single individual. This is the same methodology that caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years. That identified Brian Kohberger from a knife sheath. That helped convict Rex Hoyerman from rootless hair. Astria Forensics, the San Francisco laboratory that CC Moore confirmed she is pretty confident the FBI will use, specializes in exactly this process. Low copy number DNA. Touch DNA. Rootless hair analysis. The science that makes the partial exposure of a suspect's mouth at a crime scene into a forensic thread that builds a family tree. Now the tattoo. Because Clemente raised this publicly, and it has not received the attention it deserves. In the doorbell footage, during the moments when the suspect was on the porch and his clothing shifted, Clemente believes something visible in enhanced frames may be a tattoo. Tattoos are regional. They carry style signatures, prison-specific markings, gang affiliation symbols, custom designs that can be traced to specific artists in specific cities. Investigators are analyzing every pixel of that footage. Frame-by-frame enhancement that the FBI's Digital Forensics Unit applies to surveillance imagery has been used in past cases to identify specific branding, specific patterns, specific characteristics that were invisible to the naked eye in the original footage. If that tattoo can be identified, its style, its location on the body, its design, it becomes another filter. Another constraint on the population of possible suspects. Another piece of the portrait that narrows the field from hundreds of thousands of possibilities to a handful. Now the week's updates. Because the why question sits inside a week that confirmed more about this investigation than any 7 days since the footage was released. FBI Director Kash Patel said on Sean Hannity's podcast on May 5th, "For 4 days, we were kept out of the investigation. The first 48 hours of anyone's disappearance is critical." He confirmed the FBI recovered the doorbell footage by personally calling Google's leadership. That's why you have that image. He criticized the DNA routing to Florida instead of Quantico. He had an aircraft ready to move it through the night. Sheriff Nanos disputed those comments, saying coordination with the FBI began without delay, and that evidence decisions were made on scene based on operational needs. The CW special on May 6th produced the boss operative theory from Doctor and Burgess. That person on Nancy's stoop may have been eliminated, and Dr. Gary Brucato's spiderweb framework. The same night, Savannah left Today mid-show. A Page 6 source confirmed her exit was unrelated to Nancy. On May 7th, a YouTube live streamer found a human bone near North Craycroft Road and East River Road, approximately 15 miles from Nancy's home. Tucson police confirmed the bone was human but determined it was prehistoric. the University of Arizona's Anthropology Department, and the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner assisted. The discovery is unrelated to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. And Elizabeth Smart, speaking from the lived experience of 279 days of captivity before she was rescued, told CNN's Aaron Burnett on May 5, she could absolutely still be alive. There are cases that span many more years than mine does, and they came back alive. We're talking years and years. Back to the why. The profilers have converged on a portrait. Not unanimously. Not with the certainty of forensic confirmation. But with the specific, professional, documented convergence of multiple people who have spent their careers reading exactly these kinds of behavioral fingerprints. Someone who developed a fixation on Savannah Guthrie. Who could not reach her. Who identified her mother as the accessible point. Who conducted pre-attack surveillance across multiple visits. The January 11th confirmed prior occasion, the possible earlier reconnaissance ABC News reported through law enforcement sources. Who acquired a 25-liter backpack and gloves and a weapon and a walkie-talkie and arrived at 1:47 in the morning not nervous. Because the fantasy had already been lived. This was just the execution. That person is listening to every word of every analysis of this case. O'Toole said it. Fitzgerald knew it. The Zodiac comparison is not casual. It is the behavioral prediction of someone who needed the world to watch what they had done. He is watching. And somewhere in 5 years of communications sent to Savannah Guthrie, in a partial DNA profile being processed at Quantico, in a family tree being built outward from a commercial genealogy database upload that someone made without knowing what it would eventually find, the answer to why is building toward the answer to who. If you have information, 1-800-CALL-FBI. tips.fbi.gov. Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. 88 crime. The reward exceeds $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. Drop a comment. 2 theories. This was about Savannah, a fixation that found the next accessible point. Or this was about Nancy specifically, a predatory assessment of vulnerability that happened to discover her famous daughter. Or both, someone who noticed Nancy, discovered she was Savannah's mother, and built a plan that connected both. Which framework does the behavioral evidence support? Tell us. We read every one. Stay close.